welcome back to the channel, everybody. We're starting off the comic narration series with the Thor, the God of Thunder series from 2012. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date with any future comic series I dive into, and let me know in the comments who you'd like to see showcased on the channel. And without further ado, let's do this. The year is 893 AD. The planet Earth and the western coast of Iceland. A frost giant had been running around the village, killing and eating the people's goats, dogs, and a few of the children. The people of the village had been praying for help from the gods, and the help desperately needed was provided. Thor and a group of 20 men from the village had tracked and fought the giant for several gruesome hours, and many of them had been sent to Valhalla as a result of the raging battle with the frost giant, until he was beheaded by Thor wielding the axe of Asgard. 4 days later, we see him and the people of the village eating, drinking, partying, and telling stories. And we see that Thor tells us that he had eaten more goat meat than the giant, drank an abundant amount of mead, and made love to half the village's women, and that he loves his life. So apparently he was doing a whole lot of partying and a whole lot of fun stuff. Then a scream can be heard from the distance, and the men of the village, and Thor included, went running heavily armed. And they hope it's nothing more than just another frost giant. A young girl yells and tells them that there is a devil man in the water and she could see his face. An elderly man confirms what the little girl was stating. There's someone there, all right, or at least what's left of them. Nothing but blood. And humanoid can be seen washing up to shore, and the old man says it's been going on for hours. Another village man asks if he just fell from a ship and had been torn by the rocks, and if he's from the village, to which someone else responds that there's just isn't enough left of the headless being to know if he's actually from their village. A man wielding a sword tells the group that no, he in fact is not from the village. Ulfar, son of Orn, says that there are stories of feathered men just like the headless one that washed upon shore that have sailed to the edges of the world. The old man responds to Ulfar, telling him that he is only half right and that he does not believe that the headless man is a man at all. And the group asks Thor what he thinks as he looks into his eyes. And with an intense glare, wide-eyed look, Thor tells the group that he was in fact a god. And that's when the group becomes frightened. A god? The man replies. But who or what could have done this? Men think it could have been a sea serpent, but one tells that there are no sea serpent bites, and it couldn't have been. But that the god looks to have been butchered. And the men question what in the realms could have butchered a god. Thor smirks and says it doesn't matter, because the being cannot stand up to the Asgardian steel of his axe, and that they should make their way back to the women and the mead left in the village. Thor then looks back and tells the young boy to fetch wood for a funeral pyre. An elderly woman asks Thor if he's ever seen something such as this, and he tells her that from all the war in the heavens, to seeing suffering and bleeding of many gods, to seeing immortal fathers send their own sons to torment, and even witnessing hell itself, he has never seen something as gruesome as a god being butchered, or butchered pieces of a god. And he's never seen the horror of the look on the god's face before. She begins praying, and Thor asks her who she's praying to, and she just responds to him saying that she's praying to all the gods, as he leaves the elderly woman to pray on the shore side. As we pick up in the present day, we're in deep space on the planet known as Indigar, with a child on the planet praying to Thor. She tells him that their planet is dead, and all the life in it, and the rain hasn't fallen in years, and soon those who remain will die as well. As she continues to pray, the roar of thunder can be heard as the people begin looking up. The thunder is followed by multiple cracks of lightning and heavy downpour of rain. Thor narrates that as he heard the child's prayer, even from a universe away, and that for the people of Indigar, he brings the rain. A loud smack of Thor's hammer breaks the ground with a rush of water now filling the desert lands. He is Thor of Asgard, one of Earth's mightiest avengers, and he swears that no one will die as he brings the lightning down with him. The young girl is amazed at Thor's answer to her prayers and tells him that she did not think he would. I heard your prayer, and I would not be the mighty Thor, god of thunder, if I hadn't answered your prayers. And just like that, Thor tells the people he must be off, and that there is someone somewhere in need of smiting. And before he could take off, the people beg him to stay and to eat and drink with them, and that the cooks make the finest great rockworm and scab bark, and that they have the system's finest cave slime ale. And as Thor apologizes, he tells them that he needs to take off, but then he turns around and says, "Did you just say ale?" We all know that Thor really loves to drink. And just like that, we see him drinking and being with the beings of Indgar and storytelling about his travels and adventure. He talks about his goats, Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder, and now how he was being chased by 300 plus storm giants, and during it all just laughing his butt off. And he also proceeds to tell them of Asgard's Rainbow Bridge and all of the Golden City. Golden City of the gods, he says. And he tells them of his father Odin and his mother Frigga, and how they ruled the heavens with the bravest army there is. He is immediately asked if there are also dragons on Asgard, to which he tells them that yes, sometimes there are, as well as dwarves, elves, and trolls on the occasion, but mostly just the finest gods to ever have lived, and more gods than there are stars. Then, with everyone in the group sound asleep, one of the beings of the group tells him that they owe him their lives. And Thor just responds to him, telling him that you guys don't owe me anything. You guys owe your lives to the little girl, because without her prayer, I wouldn't even be here. And he proceeds to ask why she didn't pray to their own gods. And the elderly man or being is confused, and he just looks at Thor and responds to him saying that they don't have gods. And he turns around quickly and tells him that in all of his travels, he's never known of a world that did not have gods, because every world has their own god, as we know. And so this just stumps him, and he just doesn't understand why the man thinks like that. And he just tells him that that as he's grown up, he was told stories of gods and fancy cities in the skies, and that the stories were nothing more than children's stories that they tell around campfires and just for bedtime. And Thor aggressively grabs a man's arm and tells him that there was a time that he would have killed him for such insults, and that he saved their world, and in return the old man doubts him of his adventures and his stories. "I didn't mean any offense, my lord," he says. "Do you mean to tell me that the rainbow bridges, flying goats, and the throne on heaven is true?" And pissed at this point, Thor slowly tells him to not speak about his father anymore, and that he's off to find their gods, and when he finds them, he'll make sure that they come home. And he begins to narrate to himself a world without gods, with life spread across the cosmos. He had never once dreamed of such a thing being possible. And as he says that, he is proven correct. Stumbling across the home of the Indgar gods, or the castle rather. Now approaching the front door, we find out that yes, at a time there were gods here, so why haven't they showed up? He proceeds to open the door and yell for the gods, and tells them to come to the front door and to make themselves known. And nothing but echoes and the kicking of dust can be heard. Thor lights Mjolnir as he walks around in the dark, and he finds piles of trash, untouched treasures, and the arsenal of weapons stocked and rusting away, and he cannot find any sign of the gods. Now entering the library, he tells us that the scrolls, which tells of stories of the ruthless and powerful gods who lived within the Sky Castle, and yet just no sign of them can be found, living or dead. And without a trace, he is left with nothing more than a mystery, and he's ready to leave. And as he walks out the front door, he notices a storage building that he has yet to check, but does not even really want to check, as he doesn't think that it'd be worth looking into. And he notices the chains on the door and questions why there's chains keeping the door closed, and he's reminded that the other doors around the castle hadn't had chains on them. And so using Mjolnir, he smacks the chains, breaking them, and as they slowly fall, he pushes the massive doors open, and when the smell of what's inside finally hits him, there were the missing gods of Indgar, impaled, stabbed, and bloodied, scattered all around the room. from the floor to the ceiling. And as he looks around, his mystery is finally solved, but only to be stumped by another. Every man, woman, and child all butchered, like animals in their own fortress, he says. No invasion, no warfare, there wasn't any combat of any kind. We see that he can tell that it had been a few years at least that the gods had been dead and just rotting away. He doesn't feel that any army, any giant of any type, any sorcery, nothing could have done this. Not a ritual, no explosion of madness, and no kind of mindless beast either. And so whoever did this had relished in their sufferings. Only one being could have done this. Well versed in his own arts and well skilled, there are a variety of wounds on all of the gods, but none of the weapons used could be found. The killer must have kept them in a toolbox, he says, and he was very far from his first and very, very far from his last killing. And as Thor is about to say what since had happened, the chains start melting into some figure, and then he's attacked by what the chains had melted into. And we get to see that what the chains melted into was more of almost sorcery-like, but melts into one of the black berserkers that Gore the God Butcher can summon. And the chains acted as just nothing more than kind of like a guard dog mechanic, where once the chains were broken, it forged into one of the black berserkers, just like a guard dog. And with all the fury in the world, it tries to kill him. A very strong guard dog, he says, as he gets thrown into a wall, or thrown through a wall by the beast. He hits the ground and remembers who had done it, and at this moment he knows who did the butcherings of all the gods in Indigar, and he remembers who did it when the head had washed up on the shore side. And we find out that it had to have been Gore the God Butcher. And Thor says that, well, if he's alive, then more of the gods are only going to die. And now we pick up in the future, many millennia far from now. During the great fall of Asgard, we see old King Thor with his left arm severed, talking to himself about the quiet of Asgard and how much he hates it and cannot stand the quiet. No more sounds of battling, feasting, laughing, children running around, jokes being told between the gods and all the people of Asgard. And he yells in the silence for someone to bring him his metal arm, as he just slowly remembers that, damn, I'm old, and I'm so old that I keep forgetting that there's no one left but me. And now he gets up as he says that he will try to see Valhalla again. And he vaguely remembers how it all started, with the god's head washing ashore all those years ago. He remembers the young girl's prayer on Indegard, the world without gods. He yells to the beast roaming Asgard that there is there is only one god left who stands, and that he has words for thee. And with the Odin sword in his right hand and Mjolnir in his left, he leaps forward, ready to fight the black berserkers once more. Whatever happens, whatever my fate, know that I face it like a god. As Thor, the final god, the god of thunder, goes to war for what may be his final battle. And all right, hope you guys enjoyed. This is where we will leave off for part 2 on a bit of a cliffhanger, and you guys can see from this final page, I actually made this my screensaver because I was so obsessed with it, and the artwork and everything in the story just looks amazing, and I'm so excited to dive into this whole series with you guys. Thank you for watching all the way through. If you watched all the way through and you made it to this part, say, write in the comments, dual wielding old man Thor or something, just something random. And thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for part 2. That should be dropping on Thursday or Wednesday, depending on how my classes and things go with school. But without too much being said, I hope you guys have a great day. Again, stick around for part 2, And let me know what you guys like the most from the story, and let's start getting to speculating. Let's start doing some theories and things like that from where the story goes from here. And I'm super excited to find Gore the God Butcher and to see what goes on with the rest of the story continuing forward. But all right, guys, till the next one, peace.